Over 3 years ago, I made a list of my top 20 favorite non-superhero graphic novels of all time, and Usagi Yojimbo was on that list. Now, over the years, I've gotten several suggestions from so many of you all to do a reading order or to talk a little bit about why I love Usagi Yojimbo. Today's that day. So, let's get started. Welcome back, everybody. Before getting started, a huge thank you to our patrons for voting for this reading order. Every month on our Patreon, I put up a poll to see what the next reading order should be. And if you're curious about joining our Patreon, the link is in the description below. One of my favorite anthropomorphic characters of all time. I finally get to talk a little bit about him. So, this reading order is gonna be unprecedented, because normally I tell you, hey, start from this volume, go all the way to this volume. However, with Usagi, you can end the video here. Any of these books you can pick up. Any of these books. And you can go back and read his past adventures, because Stan Sakai does an amazing job of just filling you in with every bit of knowledge you need to enjoy the story. Now, if you're a completist like me, of course you want to start from the beginning. So that's what I'll be talking about, as well as the other options that you'll have for the very beginning. But today we're kicking it off with the Fantagraphics Special Edition box set, and one that I've talked about on the channel before. It was one of my biggest purchases ever, because Fantagraphics stated that they were only going to print one run of this, and that was it. However, here in the next week or so, as of this video, they are reprinting the hardcovers. Now, the soft covers have been printed twice, but the hardcovers, they swore up and down they were only going to do one print run. So they are reprinting it, so lucky all of you, you don't have to pay the amount that I did for this box set 7 years ago. Let's get started and looking at this wonderful journey. So what we're looking at here is the slipcase. It comes with 2 hardcovers, and again, it's also available in trade paperback editions, but this is the way that I like to collect them. So you have Volume 1 and Volume 2, and this is where the journey begins. So Usagi Yojimbo is a comic book that was created by the phenomenal Stan Sakai. It's been coming out since 1984, since he first created this wonderful character of this traveling swordsman named Usagi Yojimbo. Now, if you're familiar with the name Usagi because of either Sailor Moon or you speak Japanese, the name Usagi means rabbit. Yojimbo is a bodyguard, so this really could be bodyguard rabbit, but really Usagi is his name. His name is Miyamoto Usagi, and that's right. He is based on the famous swordsman from Japan, Miyamoto Musashi. So all of this takes place during the beginning of the Edo period in Japan. So every one of the characters here are going to be anthropomorphic characters that appear throughout his journey. Now what we're looking at, of course, is the very beginning. We're looking at the very first comics that he worked on, all from coming into an old lady's cabin, looking for shelter, introducing himself as Usagi, Miyamoto Usagi, and then getting to meet Tomoe and other characters like Gen that will play a bigger part in his life later on. And one thing you will see, since if you are a completist like me, is the evolution of an artist. Not just his art style, but also the story and the depth of his characters. There is so much in here that I adore about this book. I've always said that, Scrooge McDuck is one of my favorite characters. And the reason for that is because he's so much more human than actual human characters in comics sometimes. And I feel the same about Usagi. Now, one of the most interesting things about Usagi Yojimbo, this samurai story here. Yeah, so this is his origin story when he was a little bunny and how he grew up under the tutelage of a master. So think of something, I guess, Kill Bill, something like that. So one of my favorite things about Stan Sakai and Usagi Yojimbo is that not only has he written everything since 1984, here, let's keep going with the next book to showcase it. So this is Volume 2. And by the way, these were first printed in comic book format, of course, and then later on printed in trade paperback format. There were 7 of these, and these 2 books make up 7. And somewhere on the video, I'll put what books are included in these hardcovers. I'm not going to name them because they're just books, so I'll just tell you when I'm talking about them what these make up. So there is an introduction here by Stan Lee, and where was I? Actually, yeah, it does have something to do with Stan Lee's introduction. I was talking about not only is he the artist since 1984, the storyteller, but he's also the letterer. He literally does everything on Usagi Yojimbo and has been telling one continuous story, one episodic story since 1984. Which is why sometimes you see Usagi Yojimbo put in the manga section. Some retailers or comic book stores, I've seen them put in the manga section because it's black and white and it's one creator. And I guess he does have a Japanese name, but sometimes they put him in the manga section. Now, the first 7 books, like I said, are originally published in comic book format. Now, the hardcovers here collect those first 7 books because Usagi Yojimbo has also had different publishers. It's with Fantagraphics, with Mirage Studios. That's right, the same people that did Ninja Turtles, and then Dark Horse. So these 2 special editions that come in a slip case collect the Fantagraphics years. And it collects the 7 books known as the Ronin, Samurai, Wanderer's Road, Dragon Below Conspiracy, which is freaking phenomenal, Lone Goat and Kid, Circles, and then Gen's Story. And of course, you can probably tell what Lone Goat and Kid are like. Circles is phenomenal. And this is what I meant by you could really jump into any of these as your first story. As a matter of fact, my very first story was book number 5, which is the Lone Goat and Kid. And the reason I checked that book out was because, that's right, Lone Wolf and Cub. So I had to have that. So these first 7 books, released in 2 hardcovers or in 7 softcover formats, are only available through Fantagraphics. They still own the rights. By the way, this cover here is from the Dragon Below Conspiracy, and that is one of the best stories because all the characters that he had met in his previous adventures kind of collide in that particular adventure, and you'll be seeing that little fella throughout all of this. Let's keep going now with the next place, and that is the Dark Horse Usagi Yojimbo Saga Volume 1. So, this is the next place to go. They just reprinted the hardcover because they made a mistake when printing the first limited edition. These are also available in softcover. They just reprinted the softcover of these as well. And they made it limited to 900 copies for Volume 1. The rest of the series was 1,500 copies. Meaning there were 600 people out there that had a Volume 2 through 9 that could not find a Volume 1. So they went back into print with Volume 1 just recently. And that went out of print quick. And I think it only had 600 copies. So meaning that they were making up for the 600 that they did not print. So somewhere out there in circulation, in some comic book stores, if you find them, if you're looking, if you really want the hardcovers, you should be able to find them. So let's talk about this. What separates this? What is so different about this? So this collects the books known as 8 through 10. So you have Shades of Death, you have Daisho, and The Brink of Life and Death. So this is the Mirage years. This is when Usagi Yojimbo went over to Mirage Studios because it started in an anthology series. They saw how well he did. He got his own series of Fantagraphics, and then Stan Sakai decided to bring him over to Mirage. And who else hangs out at Mirage? These 4 Turtle brothers right there. So there were quite a number of crossovers with the Turtles. Now, after the first 16 issues at Mirage Studios, Stan Sakai decided to go to Dark Horse, and that's where he was for a long time. So I'm happy to say that, yes, we are going to get a Netflix cartoon, it looks like. It looks like it's CG. Sorry, I was reminded of the Turtles and how that's how I found out who Usagi Yojimbo was. I didn't know there was a comic book. I thought the comic book was based on the character that appeared in the animated show. I mean, what kid in the 80s didn't watch Turtles? And this little wandering rabbit, a samurai, a Ronin. And I'll explain a little bit about his origin here in a minute. But, you know, the toy was so different. He was so muscular, was so veiny compared to the little rabbit that was walking around. And then when I found it at a comic book store, I thought, oh, that's cool. I guess that is based on the cartoon. How foolish was I? Now, let's keep going with Volume 2. So here we have Volume 2. This collects Seasons, Grass Cutter, and the Gray Shadows. Now, what sets him apart? What makes him such a unique character? And, by the way, the saga of Usagi Yojimbo, all these have, whether soft cover or hardcover, have an introduction to the characters here to the left-hand side. You get to know a little bit about them. That's why, it's any of these could be accessible to a new reader. J. The whole reason of Grasscutter. Okay. So, what sets him apart? What makes him so special? What is his little origin story? So, the story of Miyamoto Usagi is one of a Ronin. So, a masterless samurai. His master got killed in a battle, and he didn't have to commit suicide because he took his master's head. And all the lore, all of that stuff is explained through these pages. So, he decided instead to follow the way of Bushido and travel from land to land doing what's right. And usually what he does is he's a bodyguard. So he's not an assassin. That's one thing about him. He has a code. He doesn't go around just killing people. He's a bodyguard for hire. And sometimes that's what usually gets him in trouble, because he decides to help people, the less fortunate sometimes. And 9 times out of 10, that's usually what puts him into situations. But that's also how he meets this wider range of cast members that will forever live with you. And that's practically his story. Now, Grasscutter, it won all kinds of awards. I think it's the one that won an Eisner. Keep in mind that he had already been publishing the book for 13 years. He had already been developing the complexity, the depth of all these characters, and then decided to kick it up a notch 13 years later with Grasscutter. It's an amazing storyline where it's the legend of a sword and the evil that's trying to capture the sword. And of course, the forces of good that are against it. And I know that is putting it in the most simplest terms ever, but he's a badass Ronin that stands for everything that is right with the world. Let's keep going, because I'm going to take forever doing this. We're only on volume 3. So this one collects Demon Mask, Grasscutter 2, Journey to Atsuda Shrine, and The Shrouded Moon. Again, previously released, originally released as single issues. So Grasscutter 2, of course, being the follow-up to Grasscutter 1. And even Grasscutter 2, I say, you don't need to have read Grasscutter 1 to find out what is happening here. It's just one that Usagi finds himself in the middle of 2 different ninja clans. And now you start seeing his supporting cast growing and growing. This includes the backstory to Kitsune, who is a fan favorite, who's the fox, who's the pickpocket. And she herself ends up getting an apprentice. Now, what you'll start noticing is some of these are going to be in color when him and Tom Luth work together. And that will happen from time to time. So let's keep going, looking at the next book. So here we have Volume 4, containing books 17 through 19. So this has the duel like Kitanoji travels with Jotaro, which is an excellent story. Fathers and Sons, which is a heartbreaking story. There's a lot of beautiful moments in Usagi. Don't let the fact that this stars an anthropomorphic rabbit fool you. Usagi Yojimbo is just, it's laced in so much historically accurate information. And that's one of the most beautiful things about this book, is that, yes, all these animals are anthropomorphic, but you learn so much about this era of Japan. This is all, keep in mind, set in the background of the Edo era. So there's so much humanity, there's so much truth, there's so much lore, there's so much rich history about that era in these particular stories. And I think that's what lures a lot of fans to keep enjoying the adventures of this masterless samurai, this Ronin that just walks the land. A lot of us just enjoy a lot of the cultural history that we learn from here. At least that's why I got huge into it. I learned to appreciate it so much more. Let's keep going with the next book. So book 5. These, by the way, if you can find the hardcovers, retail for $79.99, while the softcover versions, which are identical except they're in softcover, are $29.99. So this particular book has glimpses of death, the Mother Mountains, and then finally we get Tomoe's story. So we met Tomoe in the very first Fantagraphics book, the very first hardcover. And this pretty much shows how she ended up becoming the bodyguard to Lord Noriyuki, the little panda that appeared in that particular story. So it's her background story. Of course, Tomoe is a very well-beloved character. Now, that's one thing I was going to say too, is that there's so much research that goes into this. And the fact that he's been doing it non-stop since 1984, I think he releases 6 issues a year. It's insane. From the clothing, to the hats, to the weapons, everything about this book, from everyone I've met that has ever read this. I can't think of anyone I've introduced Usagi Yojimbo to that did not like it. I'm not gonna. That's not to say that there are people out there that hate it or don't like it at all. Because I mean, black and white artwork is not for everybody. But hey, here in a little bit, I may have something for you. Or cartoonish characters are just not for everybody. They think of furries or things like that, and that's a huge turnoff. Manga's not for everybody, so I get it. But you are seriously missing out on one of the most powerful stories, one of the most powerful characters in the history of comics in this medium. Book 6. So here we have Bridge of Tears, Return of the Black Soul, and Fox Hunt. So we have the return of Jay, who's this demon that has been fascinated with Usagi for the longest time. We have the return of a bunch of his supporting cast. But what I love this about the artwork. So you'll probably notice Usagi's face from time to time. Sometimes he'll have little dots for eyes. And that was one thing I noticed as a teenager whenever I started reading these, was, you know, the lack of detail. I didn't think I was going to dig it, because I don't know how much expressions you can carry, but once you start reading these, and once you're looking at the artwork here as I do the reading order, you'll start noticing how expressive he is. You know, you'll start seeing how much he cares about people. That's one of my favorite things about him, is that for a character like that, for a character that has lost everything, including, there is a heartbreaking story where he goes back to his home and he sees his friend and his loved one from the past and what's happened since he's left home. I love that story. I think it's a beautiful story. It's a beautiful origin story. And it kind of summarizes who Usagi is. But that's the thing that I love about him. For a character like that, he should be the silent, strong type. He should be the stoic character, a standoffish character. But no, he's not. He's kind of adorable character. He's a trickster. He is kind to kids. And he's good to his friends. And the fact that he's a badass samurai, just, man, one of my favorite characters of all time. Let's keep going. With Volume 7, collecting Traders of the Earth, A Town Called Hell, and Red Scorpion. So each of these saga books that are coming back into print do, like I said, have a cast of characters. They always have an introduction, because each of the trade paperbacks, each of the books, like I'm mentioning, has an introduction by different people. You have one from George Takei, you have one from Walter Simonson, Jeff Darrow. Sometimes they draw a picture of Usagi, but mainly they talk about the importance of the character and how much he has meant to them over time. So there's an introduction in the first book from Stan Lee. That's why I said it goes back to that, about him being a letterer. That's how he first met Stan Sakai. See, Stan Sakai was a letterer for the magazine Gru the Wanderer, Sergio Aragonés, Gru, the book that we all want somebody to collect in some kind of thick, big editions like this. Well, he was a letterer there, and then, you know, he became an artist. And Stan Lee didn't know he was an artist or publishing his own book until he was lettering, I think, some of the Spider-Man strips, the newspaper strips. Look at that. Sorry, sometimes I just have to stop and admire the artwork. So then he said he felt so foolish that he had no idea that Stan had his own character out there. And it all came from just, you know, drawing, kind of like the Ninja Turtle story, drawing a little bunny with this hair knot, like the samurais used to have. And then from there, he developed this character. Here, let's keep going with Volume 8. And again, these are limited to 1,500 copies, but there are trade paperback versions of all of these. And then, of course, trade paperbacks of the single book volumes. So this particular volume here collects the 200 Jizo, Thieves and Spies, and the Hellscreen. So to kind of summarize what I'm saying as I get here towards the end, Usagi Yojimbo is the kind of quality work that transcends genre, demographics, time, and age groups. I wouldn't have a problem with my kids who are 10, no, will be 10, whoops, sorry Alicia, and 12 reading any of this. Honestly, I wish they had read some of this stuff earlier. There's a lot of cute innocence here that's balanced by a lot of the dark brutality. But he does it in such a classy way. I don't think it's wrong for kids to read anything like this. It's simple, heartwarming stories and multi-part epics shape this dense continuity. And I say that you can pick up any of these books. And if you do, if you pick up whether it's book 27 or book 1 or one of these saga books or the IDW books I'm going to be talking about here in a minute, you'll want to go back. You'll want to explore this continuity because you'll see it grow. You'll see the character growth from the first book. And that's why I do these reading orders, because I like to experience things from the very beginning, even though people warn me, oh man, it doesn't really get good until like book 8 or book 9. His art style changes drastically. Doesn't matter to me. I need to explore everything for myself. So, yes, they look like furry, anthropomorphic characters, and they're not superhero stories, but these are some of the best books that you're going to have in your library, or you're going to read. Oh, The Painter. I think that's what this is. Alright, let's keep going. Book 9. We have the mysteries in here, the hidden, and the Usagi Yojimbo Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles complete collection all in here. So Tom Luth, that's who's done the artwork the colors. If you're ever going to see colors, and I'll showcase some of the covers, what they do with in the back of these books. So this is the final book out of the Dark Horse era, because after this, Stan Sakai decided to take Miyamoto Usagi and go to IDW, and there's a huge difference, and we'll talk about what happens here, because this collects books 32 and 33. Dark Horse did not print book 34. Book 34 is over at IDW, and we'll look at that here in a minute. But I have one more Dark Horse book to talk about. But the main thing I wanted to talk about here is that, yes, there is a Ninja Turtles complete collection. However, the complete collection also has some of his earlier encounters with the Ninja Turtles, as well as the IDW crossover here. And if you have, I believe it's in the TMNT IDW collections, this is collected in there, where they meet the Turtles. But him and the Turtles have crossed paths ever since, right before he went over to Mirage Studios. So some of those stories that you've already had collected, whether in the Fantagraphics complete collection hardcovers or the Usagi Yojimbo saga, some of them you've already read and have had collected, but they put it all back here, as well as the IDW stories here in color. Now, what I was going to say is that every one of these, including the complete collections from the Fantagraphics, and I'm sure it's going to be an exact reprint of those, they do have all the color covers. And that's what Tom Luth does. He does the colors, unless it says it's by Stan Sakai himself. So usually they'll give credit to the colors, like, there you go, Luth. And there's some sketches here. Here's Chibi Usagi, which is a series geared more towards kids. He's working, I think, on that with, is it Julie Sakai, his wife? Now, there is one more book from the Dark Horse era that I wanted to talk about, and that is Legends. Now, I put this at the very end, but really Legends can be read anywhere. These are non-canonical stories. This collects Senso, Yokai, and of course, Space Usagi. Who didn't have the Space Usagi toy from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles growing up? I think most of us did if we grew up in the 80s. However, the designs of Space Usagi is a lot different. So like I mentioned, these are not in continuity. They can be read anytime, and they're so powerful. They're so good. There is a color one-shot in here, and then, of course, just the futuristic battles. Things you would not see in a typical Usagi story. Stan Sakai just having fun. And this book is thick. And as I mentioned, this does include Space Usagi, which had been out of print for the longest time. Tom Luth supplying the colors here. Alright, speaking of colors, this is Usagi Yojimbo, Book 34, Bunraku, and Other Stories. So now we have, here's your introduction, but now we have colors. So, moving forward, when he moved from Dark Horse to IDW, Stan Sakai decided to make his book in color. So the colors are provided by his longtime partner, Tom Luth, who'd been coloring Usagi for well over 35 years now. Has it been 35 years? My goodness. The artwork hasn't changed. The stories haven't changed. All it is just adding color to this beloved character in this era. So, me, myself, it took me a while to get into it. Like, I pushed away from the idea of having Usagi in color, even though the creator himself decided that this is the way it's going to be. Let's look at the next book. The one that pushed me over the edge, Homecoming. So this is book 35. Like I mentioned, this is Peach Momoko. I did an overview of these books, so I finally got to read them. So this is Homecoming. This is him coming back to his home. And it's so interesting to see him go back to his hometown and it all being just in this color. And of course, things are never right whenever Usagi is involved. So even though it was Stan Sakai's decision to make his character in color, to make his world in color, I just, to quote Garth from Wayne's World, we fear change. And I think that was the biggest thing for me. But now it's okay. Like, I never notice whenever you get so involved and so wrapped up in these stories, you never notice if they're in black and white. I never do. Whether it's a manga or whether it's Usagi Yojimbo. And just like when I'm looking at these, I never notice after finishing, I didn't notice it was in color. Because it's the characters that it's the characters I'm in love with. So one other option you have, if you want to go back to the very beginning and you don't want to read the black and white Fantagraphics collections, well, you're in luck. Because IDW is publishing the old stories in color. Now, they're not in chronological publishing order. They start out with, I think, Samurai. They have this little tale right here. Yeah, this story right here of his backstory. It all starts with Gen asking a simple question. It has a really cute pun at the end I love. But it's this amazing story of Usagi's origin. So, it's not collected in the publishing order that it originally came out. So if you're a purist and you want to go back to the original way, then I suggest getting the Fantagraphics hardcovers that are being reprinted soon, or the softcovers, or the original 7 books. But if black and white is an issue and you want to read the adventures of Usagi Yojimbo and you want to read them in color, well, look no further than Usagi Yojimbo Origins Volume 1. Volume 2 has already been solicited. And it's just going back and recoloring those old adventures. But again, it does leave out some of the stories. I don't know if they're going to go back and publish them later or not. But that's it. That's the reading order that I have. This has been something I've been wanting to do as a big thank you to Stan Sakai for not just introducing me, but the whole world to this little samurai bunny that inspired who I am today. I look at my life in comics and I see all the inspirations that have come from them. I see a lot of Scrooge McDuck in me, but I also see a lot of Usagi going back and looking back at my life. So, yes, this is a big thank you to him, and I hope I at least piqued a few interest out there from watching this video. If you have any more questions, leave them down below. But as far as this video, that, as they say, is that. Now, some of these books, whether they're hardcover or softcover or the reprint of the special edition box set, are available from our sponsor, CheapGraphicNovels.com, your online source for collected editions up to 50% off retail price. Cheap Graphic Novels prides itself on excellent packaging, so your stuff gets to you in excellent condition, and they have amazing customer service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And for all you Minties that are watching, if you're a first-time customer, don't forget to mention that Near Mint Condition sent you their way for a promotional credit on free shipping on your next order. Now, this is only for US customers. CheapGraphicNovels.com, your source for the hottest books with deep discounts, customer service, and excellent shipping that will keep you coming back for more. And that was my Usagi Yojimbo reading order. Thank you again to our patrons for voting for this. If you want to check out our Patreon, the link is in the description below. We have different tiers, such as voting for the next reading order. As a matter of fact, I'll be putting that up sometime this week. So, again, this was the Uncanny Omar. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. We are also on Spreadshop. It's a great way to support the channel and get cool t-shirts with our logo on them, or mugs, or whatever you need. And more importantly, everyone, stay healthy, stay safe. Much love.